So I was asked by Johnson, and thank you for inviting me, asked to say something about the three worlds that define the contemporary Chinese subject: traditional, socialist, and capitalist ones. I immediately thought that for me the best way to react to this request is to show how the similar constellations are treated in the art of the post-communist Eastern Europe. Indeed, my knowledge of the Chinese art is limited, but the cultural situation in Eastern Europe is very similar to one in China. One is confronted with the return of the religious past, a return of the traditional ways of life, be it a Russian Orthodox Church or a Roman Catholic Church. So back to the period before the revolution. If you look at all the post-communist countries, Russia and Eastern European countries, they all are obsessed with the time before the revolution. So they try to reflect on that time or to return to that time. So this kind of revival of the past, that's mostly a religious past, traditional past, is a very powerful tendency in this country, and also a very powerful political force. And one is involved also in the process of transition from one secular utopia to another, from the socialist utopia to the capitalist utopia, neoliberal one. And then I would like to react to what Professor Wang said at the end of his lecture about the ability of art and ability of contemporary art, advanced art, to reflect on this kind of tension, reflect this symbolic economy involving these three forces and three order of symbolic values, and also by reflecting on them also to take a certain position, vis-a-vis or inside or maybe outside of the symbolic economy. So as an example, that is, of course, individual example. As every artwork, it is an individual artwork and cannot be so easily universalized. Still, I think for me it's a kind of paradigmatical artwork reflecting precisely this kind of spiritual, cultural, and political constellation. And that is a work by a contemporary Polish artist under the title Common Task. This project is an ongoing project. It was started in 2009. And you see here the beginning of this, the first phase of this work. He namely was asked to organize a festival or an event in Brussels in 2009. And this event had to celebrate 20 years of a new constitution of Poland. So this new constitution of Poland was, of course, an anti-communist and post-communist constitution that so to say, signified a break with the socialist past. And so, and Brussels is, of course, capital of United Europe, and of course, Polish population, Polish nation was very happy. Going back to Europe, as I say, at that time. So it was a celebration of the event of the end of communist rule and a reintegration of the Poland in the European economic and political community. So he started with this event. I say immediately now something about it, and then repeated this event different places. I will show them. Brazil, Mali in Africa, several European countries, Venice Biennial. Almost always, as he was asked, then he becomes more and more popular. He's now very influential in the international art scene. And always, as he is invited in the last years, he brings with him this crowd. Yeah, this crowd of the golden people. This golden people, but it's only one time in 2009, as he had enough money to paint the whole plane by golden color. Yeah, so all other plane are, so to say, plain. Yeah, but the uniforms are all golden, and the people in these golden uniforms are actually coming from Brodna, and Brodna is a part of Warsaw, the capital of Poland, where actually the level of population is pretty poor, and there's a lot of joblessness and so on and so on. So it's basically poor people coming to the new capital of capitalist Europe and presenting something like a quotation from the utopian idea of golden age and communist equality. Yeah, communist equality. So the name of the project is Common Task. Common Task doesn't sound very socialist and communist, maybe in English, but Общее дело would be in Russian, in Polish as equivalent, is a completely socialist communist slogan. So he comes to celebrate the end of communism under the communist slogan, presenting to the capitalist Europe golden communist mankind. But this golden communist mankind goes through certain transformations. So communist ideal, communist dream goes through a certain transformation. And I would like to now concentrate on this confirmation. So these people that are going to the West and are very happy, obviously, these people are poor, as I said, they have no money. Yeah, they come to the West as a tourist. Yeah, you will see that's always like a tourist group in different cities of Europe, that there are tourists in Brasilia, yeah, and there were tourists in other cities. As tourists mostly having money, yeah? But they don't have money, they are money. What's interesting about them, if you look at these people, you can't see them as made out of gold, yeah? As golden people, representing maybe the fact that they have golden hearts or golden souls, but in any case they are golden, and that means they are money, and that means they are currency, and that means that every representative of this group is a currency unit. So what happens here is a monetarization of communism, mankind, where everybody has a value, highest humanist value, but this value suddenly becomes at the same time, gets something like a golden equivalent, such kind of monetarized form. And this is precisely the point where the communist dream slips and transforms itself into the capitalist dream. Because capitalism is not only reality, it's also a dream. It's also a kind of utopia. Indeed, the golden mankind looks like a visualization, at the same time radicalization, of the central notion of the neoliberal ideology. And the central notion is, of course, the human capital. The utopian dimension of the neoliberal theories of human capital was extensively analyzed by Michel Foucault already in his lectures on the birth of politics in 1979. Here the human being is understood as an owner of a non-alienated set of qualities, capabilities, and skills that are partially hereditary, innate, and partially produced by the family care and education. Here, the utopian dimension of the neoliberal notion of human capital becomes clear enough. The participation at the economy loses its character of alienated and alienating work. The human being becomes a value in itself. And what is even more important, the notion of the human capital, as Foucault shows it, erases the opposition between consumer and producer. The opposition thus bears the danger to tear apart the human being under the condition of capitalism, in which, as Foucault says, man is functioning as producer and consumer at the same time. So he is confronted with radically contradictory requirements, being producer and consumer at the same time. But if the human capital is put in the center, Foucault indicates that in terms of human capital, the consumer becomes a producer. The consumer produces his and own, or her own satisfaction. And in this way, the consumer lets grow his and her human capital. In this sense, one can really work as a tourist and let one's own human capital grow. And that is precisely what the whole story is about. So this group of Grodno people going through the world, visiting museums, listening to the readings, going to the places that are not very easily accessible to normal people, even having a lot of money, and they build themselves. And by building themselves, they let the value grow. So the private capital, which are themselves, is growing. Okay, so the neoliberal utopia seems to be perfect, however, with one fundamental flaw. The neoliberal notion of the human capital can be used, and is de facto used, as a means for legitimation of the economic, social, and political inequality, as dictated by nature. The distribution of the natural gifts among human bodies is indeed unequal, and so unequal is a society built on the concept of human capital. Well, there's a problem with equality and inequalities that we discussed. At the beginning of the 1970s, Joseph Beuys was inspired by the idea of human capital and tried to reunite capitalist and socialist utopias on this common ground. In his famous Achberger lectures that were published under the title Art Equals Capital, Beuys argues that every economic activity should be understood as creative process, so that everybody becomes an artist. Then the expanded notion of art, as he said, will coincide with the expanded notion of economy. So everybody will have the same capital inside his own subjectivity and will, in expanded field of economy, express it in the same way. Here Beuys tries to overcome the inequalities that for him is symbolized by the difference between creative artistic and non-creative alienated work. To say that everybody is an artist means for Beuys to introduce the universal equality by means of mobilization of those aspects and components of everyone's human capital that remain hidden, inactivated under the standard market conditions. Beuys indicates that already Duchamp has seen and shown this identity between regular work and art, so between industrial produced objects and art objects, but was unable to draw from the discovery all the necessary social and political consequences. However, during the discussions that followed the lectures, this discussion mostly is not read here, but it's very instructive, it became fully clear that the attempt by Beuys to base the social economic equality on the equality between artistic and non-artistic activity does not really function. The reason for that is simple enough. According to Beuys, a human being is creative still because nature gave him or her the initial human capital, a talent, which is money and gift by nature at the same time. So precisely this capacity to be creative. And even if everybody, he says, would get the same gifts, so the same capability of being creative. Not everybody will have additional gift to use this first gift. So in this sense, even if we achieve a complete equality in distribution of the human capital, our ability to use this capital will be limited. So we have to do with an unequal distribution of the natural gifts. That is a problem. And that is a reason why looking for a secure basis for universal equality, and Altheimer was equality. Altheimer goes not further into the future, but back to the past. That is a point where this tradition, the third world, actually emerges. To create a socialist plus capitalist utopia of the equal human capital, he recurs to the old syncretic religious teachings, combining Roman Catholicism, Theosophy, and Buddhism. Indeed, the human bodies are diverse and unequally gifted, but the immortal souls are equal. Immortality always equals immortality, and immortal being equals all other immortal beings. That is a belief that Altheimer recurs to time and again in his interviews and artworks. Even if there is an immortality of soul as things as immortality independently of all Christians' promises of redemption, he believes in its existence. In one of his conversations with Arthur Zmejewski, Altheimer says, and I quote, "A sense of timelessness and non-mortality accompanies me at all time. I have no fear of death. I feel myself immortal. In the context of today's world, it is madness, but I say what I am thinking and feeling." End of quotation. In some of his interviews, Altheimer also speaks about the possibility of separation of the soul from the body and the body exchanges. I really believe in the body exchanges. Specifically, he speaks about the dreams in which he dreamed his own soul occupying different bodies. One can say that the immortal soul is treated by Altheimer as an exchange value of the body, as a general equivalent that allows to exchange one body for the other. In other words, the soul functions here as gold, as currency. The currency is indeed immortal because purely abstract. And as we know already from the Marxist theory of commodity, fetishism, the price of the object cannot be found in this object itself or deduced from a specific natural characteristics of this object. The exchange value is perfectly artificial. It is a supplement of an object, not an integral part of it. That is why every object can become a commodity being substituted by another object of the same value. Now we see here how the collaboration of the three worlds functions. The religious tradition functions as a medium of transition from the socialist world in the capitalist world, and maybe also back. It is an equivalence that makes the exchange between two secular worlds possible. So I, for example, change from socialist and capitalism to capitalism by I still am Polish religious thinker. So nothing happened to my identity. The identity is the value of exchange between socialist and capitalism. Yeah? Or I'm a Chinese intellectual, and I'm Chinese intellectual. My soul is actually eternal. Yeah? So that's not a problem to change it, that secular utopia or back. Okay, so the soul of tradition is a mechanism to establish an equality between equality and inequality. Yeah? You can exchange equality to inequality and equality back to equality through the equivalence, and equivalence is your national tradition, yeah, in your soul, in what is actually essence of your inside yourself. Okay, there's one move. So universality of the old men is manifested not by their bodies, but the golden uniforms that cover these bodies. Here the immortal inner self is manifested by external golden garment. So my heart is gold. That's why my overall is also gold. Yeah? Overall, my heart is what I am clothed in. Yeah? Here the immortal inner self manifests as a uniform, yeah? As a kind of design. This kind of transformation seems to be strange, but it is not. The substitution of the soul by the clothes is an oldest possible religious practice. All the theories of an aura are based on the assumption that a body is clothed in its soul. Yeah? It's auratic, atmospheric, golden, many cases, yeah, kind of covering, substance covering my body. Yeah? So that is nothing else as materialization of the aura. Yeah? This understanding of the spiritual auratic informs also Walter Benjamin's definition of the artwork, originality, so its soul, if one wants, as here and now, into which this artwork is inscribed. So context, so actually how it's clothed, yeah, it's about clothes again. Now, if you look at the old Catholic icons, especially Baroque, you see these auras, yeah, golden auras, you see these golden robes, yeah. So, soul is the same as a uniform. Both are uniform design, yeah. Both of them are artificial supplements of the human body. And what is most important is that you can exchange human bodies but soul and uniform remains. Yeah? So let us exchange all these people. That is actually what happens. Yeah? That is completely different people. But because they have the same uniform, they belong to the same golden mankind. And their hearts are made of the same, and souls of the same gold. So actually, soul becomes design, and tradition and nationality also becomes design. It becomes a uniform, it becomes a brand that remains eternal, even if the bodies inside this kind of uniform are exchangeable. Yeah? Beuys said that art equals capital, but that was not enough. Althammer went further the same way and demonstrated that soul equals design. To obtain this result, one has to go not only through the capitalist as Beuys, but also through a socialist life experience. Thank you.